Hello, everybody. Welcome to the fourth instalment of Witch Week. Tonight you've got me and Scott, and we're going to be talking about the witches and Pollock, but more importantly, the Renfrewshire witches. So, you've already seen a good few lives already this week, and hopefully, this one will make you more educated on subjects that you might not be sure about. Okay, so I'm just going to have a wee start now. So, the Witchcraft Act, it began in the year 1542. Anyone suspected of witchcraft or dealing with sorcery were tortured into confessions and thrown into jail, or worse, they were hung and then subsequently sometimes burnt. Um, the first subject we're going to go into is the Pollock estate. Sir George Maxwell. He had a keen interest in witchcraft. He travelled up and down Scotland, all over Scotland, to act as a witness in various trials. In 1976, a servant came to work at the estate in the name of Janet Douglas. Janet came to the estate unable to speak. Now, I don't know if she was unable to speak or she just didn't speak completely, because there's conflicting stuff about what I've been researching. But anyway, Janet, she came to Pollock House to work as a maid, and had, after which George Maxwell became ill. So he became ill, he was getting stabbing pains down his side, and Janet had made them aware of the fact that it was women, local women, that were causing this to happen. Now, there's conflicting stories. Some say that she took his workers, his staff, two members of staff, to this lady's house, and she showed them where all these artifacts of witchcraft were, whether it was the wax dolls, and showed them exactly where it was, or whether she had a miraculous recovery in her speech and was able to tell them exactly where this was. But the lady that was, there was three servants actually. There was three servants that got accused, and also there was one lady. She was a widower. She was a local woman, with her and her son and her daughter. Um, so the three servants, that was Bessie Weir, Mag Jackson, and Marjorie Craig. They were all servants, and the widow was Janet Stewart or Janet Massey, one of the two. They were accused along with her son and her daughter, John and Annabel. Janet obviously had their home searched for items of witchcraft. These people were all tortured and into confessing, which some did. So on the 20th of January 1667, they were all tried and found guilty, all except Annabel. She was only 14. She was too young to be tried, but she was put in jail, and she was kept in there for a considerable amount of time before then being released. But then she got put into a convent and then spent some years there, and then she was put back into society. Fortunately for her, 2 years down the line, she was tried again for witchcraft, and after that, there's not really any history about what happened to her, actually. So Janet continued herself to make accusations. Rumours say she had gone to Salem and was involved in the trials there, but more probably she was actually sent to Edinburgh, and in and out. She was in and out. She was a seer, and because she could see these things, she was telling like the clergy, all these different people, ministers, things that nobody should really know. So it was kind of getting her excused from actually being hung. But she did eventually manage to just disappear off the face of the earth, and there was no records of her ever again. And this is the kind of backstory for Pollock House, Pollock Estate. in the George Maxwell case. But later on, George Maxwell did suffer. He regained his composure with his health and stuff like that, but it was never to last. And George Maxwell passed away, and his estate was left to his son, John Maxwell. And we'll talk about him later. But now, 20 years on, we will talk about the trials in Paisley. So this is the Renfrewshire witch trials. Sorry, Andy Murphy. Funny how they were too young to be tried, but not too young to accuse and be listened to. That's right, and it's quite funny because there was a lot of younger people, like 11 and 12-year-olds. So how they kind of came to these decisions, maybe because this was quite late on in the witch trials, so maybe I don't know what they thought they were going to achieve with that, how they could no hang one or try one and then try other ones, because there is, I'm sure in my research that I did read that there has been younger ones dying, which it's just a shame. But again, in the course of history, information does get confused and lost a wee bit. So I hope that it is a shame, Andy. But I'm going to go on and talk about the Renfrewshire witch trials, okay? So you're ready. The next one is the last witch trial. The mass witch trial was in Western Europe. So a total of 8 people tried and have their lives ended. Margaret Lang, John Lindsay, James Lindsay, John Reed, Catherine Campbell, Margaret Fulton, and Agnes Naismith. They were people, not just names. They were normal people in today's society. But in the reign of King James VI, they were accused, charged, and killed, basically, from the accusation of witchcraft. The accusation centred around that of Christian Shaw, the daughter of Laird Shaw of Bargarin of Erskine. She was 11 years old. In 1976, on the 11th of August, the young girl caught one of the housemaids stealing milk. Now, back in the day, when I've been doing my research, and that is enough to be charged with witchcraft. Theft was a hangable offence anyway, but this girl took it upon herself then to tell her mum, okay? And so this caused her mum to then chastise this servant. And her name was Catherine Campbell. And the servant's name was Catherine Campbell, and had worked for the Shaws for only 7 months. She had moved up from the Highlands and had been living in Renfrewshire for about 6 months, and had found herself in Bargarin House, where the Shaw family were living. Now, I think I've got a wee picture of Bargarin House, actually. I'm just going to show you that just now. Right, so there's Bargarin House there. I don't know if you can see that okay. Right. That's where the Shaw family live. After Christian had told her mum about Catherine stealing the milk, she was chastised by her boss. So she was livid. She was livid with the boss's daughter, that she cursed her soul through hell by the devil himself. And by that, little did she know that from that statement, her fate was then sealed. And on the 21st of August, a woman called Agnes Naismith, who was known to the family, I mean, she travelled into the house quite often, because in those days, everybody was poor. So in the Bargarin, although they were a wealthy family, they still had means to help. And so as she went to the Bargarin house, she had an encounter with young Christian. Now, whatever words was spoken, I don't know. But then the next day, that's when Christian Shaw began to fall ill. So this was a mysterious illness, and it set in, and this is when all the problems really began. So Christian Shaw became very ill. She was having convulsions, which were really violent. And after so many weeks, there was no signs of them letting up. They spoke, the family, her mum and dad, they spoke to like a family member to see if they could find out anything. Then they took her to the local doctor, but the doctor couldn't really see a reason for all these kind of violent fits she was having. And so time passed, and they eventually decided they were going to take her to Glasgow, and they got a physician. But again, still no explanation could be found for all these convulsions she was having. But after that, 8 days passed, and since that visit, the symptoms did ease slightly. This wasn't to continue though, because the convulsions and fits, they became more violent, and she would become stiff and non-responsive as a result of these things. So sometimes like she looked like she was dead because of them. So it must have been quite hellish for an 11-year-old girl to be going through that kind of situation, as it must have been for her parents to sit back and watch that and no understand exactly what was going on, especially if the doctors couldn't really work it out. So she was then took back to the physician, but again, there was no rational explanation, although by this time the symptoms had become even more bizarre. No choice now but to contact the local parish minister. By this time, things had escalated. She'd been taking things out her mouth. She'd been taking straw out her mouth, like coal cinders, chicken feathers, was it hair and bones. These were all things that she was bringing out her mouth. So you can imagine that the local minister, he decided, well, if there's no other logical explanation for that, then it must be witchcraft. So witchcraft was declared. After that, the Begarin House, it was a base for prayers and fasting in order to stamp this evil out. And that's what they did. They stamped out evil by trying to pray and make sure that they're pure, try to create purity within the person that is infected. And over the course of the time, a case was building against Catherine Campbell and Agnes Naismith. In fact, over 30 people were accused, but only 8 stood trial. Now, I'm going to wait. We're going to talk about the trial next, right? But I want to kind of just have a wee break for there and talk about Christian Shaw. I want to discuss what could have been happening to Christian Shaw. Now, back in the days, they weren't known. Now, was she possessed? Specialists nowadays, they possibly assume that she could have had hysteria, paranoia, because this was only like a few years after the Salem witch trials. Did she know about these witch trials? Because she was very well versed in Christian in the Bible. She knew what all that meant. So did she actually think, well, this lassie's cursed me? Am I, she just got really, really scared because she's been young. She's been so young, and as it sent her into mass hysteria, has she had schizophrenia in psychosis? The fact of the schizophrenia and psychosis is a wee bit iffy because she went on to have a perfectly normal life. So it leads me to think then, I don't know, it was either a mass hysteria, she was just panicking, or she fabricated the full thing. Or she possibly could have been possessed. Who knows? You can tell me in the comments what you think might have been the cause of that. So I'll then go on to talk about the trial, and I will just sort myself out here. So the trial, right? Now, this is a lengthy story, so I hope you're all sitting comfy. That's all right. I hope everybody's okay in the chat. I hope everybody's comfy and enjoying this story.
Everybody's fine. We've got Simon, we've got Andy, Murphy, we've got Steve, we've got Charlie and Roxer in as well. Jacqueline's in as well. I don't think I've missed anybody. If I have missed anybody, sorry.
Well, hello everybody.
I forgot Wayne. Sorry, but I forgot Wayne.
Hi, Wayne.
I think that's everybody. But any questions Oh, she's Tracy Milligan's in, Abby Davison
Hi,
as
Tracy.
well. Back to them.
Where Sam's working, so or else she would be in. So we mentioned to Sam.
Oh, sorry, Ghost Witches as well. She's in, and
Hi, Boris.
to say hello to Tayami and Wilson and all the crew, because I'm watching
Hello,
these.
Miami and Wilson and all the crew. Hello.
You're
Are
being
you
watched.
listening to that story? Are you listening to that story? Because it might give them nightmares. Right, so we're going to go into the trial, okay? Right, so many witnesses were called, servants, doctors, parents, and of course the minister. Over 30 people were accused. The fact that this was the last mass witch trial in Western Europe saw a more rational trial being held, resulting in only 8 convictions. Most of these were already suspected of working with the devil. Christians' words were only an extra piece of evidence in support of it all. Abby, we are sitting waiting to hear about the witches. Tracy's the biggest witch, though. No comment. um, Forrest, all this watching you guys is doing wonders for my getting to grips with the Scottish accent. I'm really, really pleased because us Glasgow accents are really, really hard to understand. And especially when you just double that with nerves. It's a wee bit.
I
So,
can understand the Glasgow accent. I don't have any trouble understanding the Glasgow accent. I can
hello,
understand.
Diana.
She says hello. Kerry O'Neill's in as well. Evening, Kerry.
Evening.
Shared but can't stay. That's all right, Justin. Thanks very much for coming in.
Right. Thanks for joining anyway.
Talk to you soon and stay safe.
Brilliant. Right, so block Abby Davison. You're just going to get spammed with they two now. So
That they're your pals, aren't they? They're your pals,
yeah.
right?
Yes. So
Carry on. Sorry with the interruption, Doc.
So as I was saying, most of these people were already suspected of working with with witchcraft. Christian Shaw's words were only an extra piece of evidence in support of it all. By using the pricker, listening to statements, and one by one to Christian Shaw while she was blindfolded, what they did was they took like the accused and they took her to the Christian Shaw and blindfolded Christian Shaw and they made Christian Shaw touch these witches and or these women or and men, and if then she started getting into convulsions, then that was a surefire. That was them basically getting their answer that they were guilty, along with the witness statements and the pricking. And obviously they did get a bit of torture, but there didn't seem to be too much reference on what kind of torture they got. It was more so like maybe sleep deprivation. That was kind of the main key torture that they got. But again, because this was near the end of the witch trials, I don't know if it was they just got a wee bit less brutal. I don't know. There might be more on that story about the torture methods in that year. I don't know. But anyway, this is what happened. Well, what I just thought was how primitive these methods were. Like they never really. I mean, it's not like nowadays. They never had a forensic analysis and stuff like that, and fingerprints and all these kind of things. There was no other ways they could actually try and work out how to kind of guess whether they were a witch or no. So I just thought that the methods they had were really, really primitive. But obviously back in the days it must have been really terrifying. So
just for yourself, but they used less torture back. Also, that was the 17th century. Don't forget, in the 17th century, what was happening was King James VI, I think it was, had started to sort of think about witch trials and what have you, and whether they were, actually, true. And that's when they started installing judges in English courts that were opposed to torture. So maybe, I'm not saying this, this is what happened, but maybe up in Scotland, they were taking notice of what was happening board of King James's new look on the witch trials, and they were still use torture, but it's kind of like walking in eggshells a wee bit. We'll still use some. Can go to town on them? Maybe that's why.
Or maybe they were banged to rights anyway, so they knew they didn't need a confession out of them because they were, even though they did try to get a confession out of them till the day, Ken, but exactly what you're saying, that's what made me think there's something in that there's no too much talk about the torture methods that was getting used at that time.
Because it was dying out then, that's when the big turnabout in the witch trials started happening, that's when they started to fade out, in the early 16th century.
That's right. But again, people were still getting like hung for like stealing, like maybe stealing sheep or just breaking into folks' houses, and they were getting hung for that. Do you know what I mean? So like you compare witchcraft with the kind of things. What the society must have believed in back in the day was there isn't really much difference. If you're dabbling in anything that's going to cause harm to somebody else, then that's a death penalty, really. Which I'm awful glad we're born these days. That's for sure.
You see, they're getting hung for stealing a sheep and what. They laws had been out for centuries, whereas witchcraft, it was only 15, 16.
That's right. It had only been a limited time.
They made it a capital offence, so that was punishable by death. So that's why folk are still getting hung for stealing a loaf of bread or whatever, because they'd always been capital crimes. The Witchcraft Acts set witchcraft aside to everything else, if you know what I mean.
No, I get what you're saying. Definitely. Well, what I'll do is I'm going to talk a bit more about the kind of trial here, right? So permission was granted from Edinburgh for the investigation to begin. The commission was made of local landowners and businessmen, some who were related to the Shaws. But one particular person who had an axe to grind was John Maxwell. And actually, he was a Lord Justice Clerk, actually the Supreme Criminal Justice of Scotland. So he was fairly high up, and he had an axe to grind against witches, basically. And you've heard, obviously, what I'd said before about what happened to his dad, but 20 years previous to this. So clearly he was just wanting to be like his dad, and he just wanted to see these witches hung. And retribution, I think, would be the word for that. That's right. But unfortunately for him, he was replaced. For whatever reason, I don't know. I think maybe possibly conflicting interests. Maybe that was the reason that he was maybe replaced, because the kind of system that they had then was more controlled. They were at the latter part of the hysteria, pretty much. So they knew what they were doing, and they knew that if they had him, then there wasn't going to be a fair trial. That is, in my own opinion, that's what I'm reading between the lines anyway. But it could be a lot of rubbish, and then it could be something completely different.
You've got a point there. I mean, it could have been that they were starting to, because by then the witch trials had, the witch trials had been running for maybe 150, 170 years or something. So it was coming to an end, and society was starting to maybe listen to the king and listen to Parliament and think, well, wait a minute, maybe like 20, 30 years prior to that, folk were burn them and hang them, let's get rid of them. But then at that time we're thinking, well, things are changing, and maybe all these people aren't the witches or aren't the guilty. So, no, it could have been right. You might have seen, well, this guy, he's a bad apple, so we need to get short of him and get someone who's going to look at it in a fair way.
You can nowadays, if you know somebody that's in court, it's like witnesses and whatnot kind of hang, try to keep everybody apart and stuff like that. So you can just see how things would have been back then. Maybe that's when it's kind of stemmed for. Well, anyway, who knows? We never know. It's just speculation. But so let's just see, where am I? Right, so the person that replaced him was a major landowner at that time in Renfrewshire, and incidentally, he was related to the Shaws, to Christian Shaw's family. So, right, I'm going through these bits of paper, just try and keep myself right. So at the end of 35 people were implicated in total. Elizabeth Anderson, she confessed and gave a statement. Thomas Lindsay confessed, gave a statement. They were both related to a lady called Jean Fulton. Now, that is another lady that I would love to try and find out more about, because she seems to come up a few times in all these statements, that she was the one that took them to the woods and to Bargarn House to meet the devil. She was the one responsible, but unfortunately she died previous to these witch trials, and I never had time to try and look up any more about her. But maybe in a future live we can do that. So I'll just talk about, these are the people that have confessed, really, right? So you've got the Elizabeth Anderson, Thomas Lindsay, James Lindsay, Janet Roger, Margaret Roger, and these people all actually confessed and gave statements. Now, a lot of these statements corroborated each other's statements, so it meant then it backed up exactly the evidence against the rest of the accused. Janet Roger claimed that the others were responsible for giving themselves to the devil, for the death of numerous children, for overturning a ferry and drowning two men, for being the result of the minister's death, of the minister of Dumbarton's death, sorry, and for plotting the death of Christian Shaw and the destruction of the Bargarin house. And again, I couldn't find any record on the Jean Fulton, but that's quite a lot. And what I always found interesting, and this might sound a bit mental, that I found it interesting, but when they gave themselves to the devil always requested that you touch the top of your hand and the sole of your foot with the other hand, and everything in between was the devil's. And if you did that for him, he would give you everything back. And that's what these people did believe. That's what these people were led to believe, that if you gave your soul to the devil in that kind of way, then everything would be all right. But no, everybody. This is what I've been reading. This is what I found in my research. But no, everybody did that. Obviously, there was other ways as well. But that's just one that stuck in my mind, and I just thought we'd get that point across here. So they tried to plot against the Bargarin house and bring down the destruction of the family, pretty much because they were jealous slightly because of how wealthy they were, and these people were just kind of on the outskirts of life, just kind of sailing by and try to get whatever means they could to survive in life because they were all poor. So the next part would be the 8 people that were charged and were condemned to death. Now, their names were Margaret Lang, John and James Lindsay. They two were brothers, the curate and the bishop. They two were young. Agnes Naismith, who visited Christian Shaw, and Catherine Campbell, who stole the milk. And Margaret Fulton and John Lindsay of Barlock, and a fella called John Reid. All but one were hanged at the gallows. John Reid, 3 weeks previous, took his own life in the toll booth. They were all in the toll booth, and that he took his own life pretty much the same way, but he obviously didn't want anybody else to have that pleasure. He just didn't want a part of that up at the gallows.
He wanted
he just wanted it done, and that was it. He probably couldn't suffer any more because, as I said, I don't know what torture methods they used in the prisons. You know what I mean? I didn't know exactly because there was no document at that time to say exactly how they were tortured. Mm-hmm. But obviously, the sleep deprivation would at least be one of them, and God knows what else. And what happened to them in the jails that they couldn't suffer, because they weren't in really nice places either. So obviously, this fella took his own life, but the rest of them, 3 weeks later, were took up to Gallow Hall. They were all implicated, the confessors. None passed the test, and witness statements were enough to seal their fates. They were hung at Gallow Green in Paisley, then burned. A memorial had been placed at Maxwellton Cross. It was understood that the curses the women shouted before they died were directed at the people of Renfrewshire. Now, what happened after the death? There was certain tragedies that happened, and they believed that this was a result of the witch's curse. So they put a memorial plaque in this cross. I think I've got a picture of it actually. Sorry, I'm just going to show you that. Just bear with me. Right, that's a memorial. I don't know if you can see that properly.
Mm-hmm.
It has got some sort of inscription on it. And that was the toll booth in Paisley. That's where they were tried. So just a couple of interesting wee pictures, please.
We can post them on the page, but Shelly, we can post them on the page so folk can see them better anyway.
I will show. There's an illustration of Christian Shaw in our room. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an illustration. It's obviously photos weren't invented these days, were they? Right, so next one. I think that's us just about that's us at the end of that. So that was kind of what happened in the witch trials. A load of them confessed, but they had all implicated these other people, and their stories was all corroborated. And unfortunately, they were took to Gallow Green. There is a well at Gallow Hill, and it's behind Hussey's. So, and all they've got is like it's like a wee pad in, and it's just like a brick kind of well. But there's not really much there to signify that that's where they were kind of hung. You wouldn't looking at the place now. You wouldn't know that was where they were hung. Most people just know about the memorial plaque in the middle with the horseshoe. I used to have a horseshoe. I used to have a horseshoe. It was like a bricked up bit, and then the big steel horseshoe was in it. But because of all the road traffic, it started getting dislodged, so they lifted it. And then I think after that, then the businesses started to go like downhill and stuff like that. So they replaced it with a nice new shiny one, and they're hoping then that's the end of that kind of cursy thing, and that Paisley's going to be on up and coming place again. So, but pretty much that's the end of that. But I'm just going to let you know what happened to Christian Shaw once the trials. Sorry, I missed that comment, Scott.
No, it's Charlie and Rock saying you've got to have fun while filming, because there's a wee bit of video out with the Haunted Hunts. Charlie and Rock's with the Haunted Hunts team shows Charlie in a tunnel, basically. I'm not going to say anything, wee bit of dancing. So obviously he enjoyed that wee bit of filming, because somebody made a comment. It was Andy made a comment earlier on about his dancing. So it was quite good. That's what I'll say, Charlie. It was quite impressive.
Oh, good. Right, so Ghostwitches, wasn't there a witch up north that was buried upside down with a rock on top of her graves so she couldn't dig herself out? Do you know what? I don't actually know this, Forrest, but I will have a look for that anyway. It certainly wouldn't surprise me, because they've obviously tried everything in their powers to make sure that these people didn't get back out. But there is graves that have the graves on top of them, so I don't know why they wouldn't just do that.
I know there is one. I don't know, Charlie and Rox can help us with this. I think it's in Newchurch graveyard. There was a witch. It might be Newchurch, but there was a witch. She was buried upside down, and there was a rock placed. That whole idea was as simple as Ghostwitch says, so she couldn't get back out. I think it's Newchurch. I'm not 100%. I'm kind of 70% sure that that's where there is one. I dare say there's plenty more.
We'll definitely be googling that just shortly. if anybody can confirm that, even, because it is quite interesting. It's interesting to know all the different kind of methods that we use just to try and stop things happening.
I believe
even though these people weren't specifically bad, they just had a tongue on them or whatever kind of thing, that people would just take literally.
I'm sure Simon Entwistle told the story as well. He done the story in one of his videos as well. I think Simon done it. I'll get Simon later on, and I'll find out for you. I'll get on to
you do that, because I can't get the best of memories. So, but that is fairly interesting. Now, is there any more comments coming up in the chat, Scott? If there's
No,
anybody got any questions, feel free to ask. No, none just now.
no,
That's
fine.
great. Right. So we're just going to tell you the last bit about what happened to Christian Shaw at the end. We all know what happened to the people that were confessed. A lot of them got away with it. They didn't give their souls to the devil or whatever. So, and they implicated the ones that were hung. Ghost witches. I'd be hung, drawn, and quartered, skinned, burned for having my gob back in those days. Too right, Forrest. That's exactly it. And I think most of us would. I think I used the term. Well, I'll not say it again on a live, but but we probably would. We definitely would. And I think it would be really, really easy. I think was it King James would have a field day in this. There would be nobody left. There would actually be nobody left. Another thing what I was going to talk about actually about the what I had sorted about the courts when they were doing the trials. The doctors probably would have been in fear actually. Like they would have been told to kind of try and sway them to just even if they were kind of the doctors like you don't get myself mixed up. So like corruption. Corruption and stuff like that, and blackmail. So, the doctors would be feared to say that they weren't witches, or they maybe the prickers were feared to say that they weren't a witch, or like different people would be feared because they would be implicated in the witchcraft as well if they went against the kind of the people that were doing the trials, really, like the privy councils and stuff like that.
I know you mean say just a talk say the word doctor, he it was his job to examine the witches, so it might probably whisper through his mind. If I turn around and say no, this woman isn't a witch, then it's going to go bad for me. Because basically,
I think the jury would have been easily influenced. You know, they would be. It would be easier just to say, "Oh no, they're guilty," rather than turning around saying they're no guilty. Because if they say they were no guilty, then that's basically them putting themselves into the firing line. Well, why are you saying that? Do you know what I mean? If you got a special interest in witchcraft that you're thinking that these people are no guilty, so there've been a lot of that going on too because of obviously that goes on quite a lot, corruption and blackmailing and scaremongering, so that they would have got their own ways really.
I've got 3 comments for you, though. I'll put them up one by one.
Abby Davidson. Hi, Abby. I was in Edinburgh and went to this underground place and there was a wee cave and it was a circle of stones and if you stood in it, it was bad luck, something to do with the witches. Do you know anything about it? Yes, this is the witches' coven and no good to go into that circle because that's where they kept all the bad spirits in that circle. That's in the Edinburgh vaults, the Nidri Street vault. Me and Sam's been there. We went there, we went on a tour. Well, we've done an overnight investigation in the vaults actually, but this one particular time we went to the vault and they were explaining to us a wee bit about these the stone circle. They've also got the one next door, but that's been shut off to the public. That's the one who don't let anybody into the pub. Can't talk. So the one next door, it was used, but it's no used anymore, and it's blocked after the public. The one that's the stone circle, they say the inside of that is actually quite it's full of bad spirits, and apparently, probably somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but if you do dare to go into that circle, you've got to come back out at the exact same spot you were in.
Mm-hmm.
So I know Sam would be able to tell you a wee bit more about that. To be fair, she's got a better way of speaking about it than I have. But that stone circle, there's something about that Hale room. In fact, there's something about the Hale vaults. And if you ever get the chance, go back. Definitely go back and then get into that. Maybe not go into the circle, but actually go into the room and experience it. I would say experience all that place. It's great. Tracy Milligan.
It's a good job time think the amount of people that would be classed as a witch in these days and hung.
Yep. And I mean, I know a lot of people that I've known, and when you grow up, I mean, even just I don't know, it's just immense. I mean, like there's so much greed, corruption, jealousy, or hatred, and stuff like that. That it would be so easy just to say, "Oh, see her, she is dabbling in witchcraft," and then say to her sister, "Oh, well, if you say this, you'll get all this," and it, you'll get everything you could ever dreamed of with this person,
Mm.
i.e. the devil. And I mean, in a lot of these stories, I don't know why the devil, they kind of tell him he's a big black man and he's a big black cold man. I don't know why they always say that. I don't know why that's a kind of thing. It seems to be a theme throughout these stories. The black man with the cold hands. Don't know, but apparently he gives you your world. And I'm pretty sure if half the people in this world, about 80%, if they said if you do this, then you'll get everything you could dream of, they would do that because people are just self-infatuated and wanting their own good things, basically. So it's a good job time sometimes.
I
And
would, yeah, you know, as I said all week, you know, it, the amount of people who were accused and the amount of reasons you could be accused for, could be a land rival, a love rival, somebody that you had a wee argument with, and you were disabled, if you had even something like a stutter, if you had a birthmark, stuff like dementia, anything like that, the finger was red, if you had red hair, if you were not married, the amount of reasons that you could be accused of being a witch was just unbelievable. And there's all the reasons that you get in everyday society these days,
that's right, all walks of life as well.
We all fall out with people every now and again, but back then you would have been, she's a witch,
Aye.
simple as that. Ghost witch. Next. Not married.
Forrest got married at 20 years old, haggard witch, burn her, shows her ankles, burn her, doesn't believe in washing a man's undergarments, unheard of, burn the witch. You're right.
It was really...
Forrest is just evil. Anything they could do to get rid of the, or what's the word, obstacle. If it was an obstacle in somebody's way, or if you just didn't like them, boom, husband, wife, she's a witch. Here, she's a witch. And it was always her, she's a witch. But there was that many guys doing it as well. And I think somebody said, no, it was last night, it was Jennifer that said this day as well. It wasn't just men, it wasn't just women, there was animals that were classed craft as well. Which
is that last
mind, actually.
I'd never heard that before. I was quite surprised at that, animals. So it just shows you the belief that these people actually had, here and in America. But as you say, Jennifer, Shelly, being on live all week, it's no good for you, I'm telling you. It's no good. You say if there was an obstacle your way, then that was the best way to get rid of it, was to, witch. I mean, one of the biggest examples is, again, I don't know why I touched on Pendle, but Alice Nutter. She went in and fought for her land rights, and Roger Knowles was furious at this. He wanted the land back. He was absolutely raging, and he pointed the finger, and he said, she was accused of witchcraft.
That's right.
Problem solved.
Well, is that? I've got a subject, right? Just a wee quick one before I round after the Christian show to round us off for the night. Soraya M. stoned to death in 1986. Husband plotted against her with Mullah. That was the minister, in Iran. Plotted against her to have her killed because she wouldn't divorce him. He wanted to divorce her to be with a 14-year-old lassie, right? And she wasn't divorcing him. Now, he had 3 ways to her, but he wouldn't want to stay with her. He wanted to marry this lassie as a package deal. because the lass's father was in jail and he was supposed to be giving this fella loads and loads and loads of money. So when a guy in that kind of village, his wife died and he was mourning and he had a young son, Soroya went in to help him, and he's got his wee meal ticket. So he corrupted the mullah, and he got the mullah on side to try and help him. The guy that was mourning that had lost his wife, he bribed him, blackmailed him. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to kill your son. And so he got that guy to then say that they were having an affair, basically. And in Iran, that was that. So they, so they go to the guy that did the kind of sheriff did the trials, basically, right? And they convinced him to try her, and they sentenced her to stoning, and they all went and buried the hole, buried her in it, up to the waist, with her arms in it, she couldn't move, and basically stoned her to death. And that is pretty much witchcraft in the modern world. You know, things like that don't really change. That vault, that's what it was. I was too scared to put my foot in. I have a picture and it's everyone standing. It's like a big lane. It was really interesting. It's fascinating, the vaults. I mean, we've got to be doing Abby, we're going to be doing and I think it's a couple of weeks now, is it the 5th of March, Scott? We're going to be doing a live episode.
We've got Jamie Christoffen coming in, the manager of Edinburgh City Dead Tours, who, does tours in Greyfriars and the vaults. He's coming on, and we'll be talking to him. So, he'll tell you, everything you need to know, vaults, about Greyfriars, the lot.
That's right. Anything you want to know, he's your man, because he's the information that guy's got is second to none, and he knows the vaults inside out. So if you want to watch about that, Ian, 5th of March, Jamie Christoffen. So the next, I'm going to just kind of finish off a wee bit here with the Hale, would you call it? Oh God, Gillian Daniels. I'd definitely be hung for a witch. I think I said the other night. Do you know what? I don't think there's a person in the planet that in the 21st century that wouldn't be tried for a witch, because we've all sinned.
I'm just running through some of these comments, Shelly. I'm not going back. It was bad
enough. I came out chalk white, but great history and experience for anyone would recommend it. Try staying in the vaults every night, Abby. And actually, I didn't really find it that bad. My bath would definitely have hung me. Definitely a mole I've got there. A star. I mean, the birthmarks alone, Gillian, you're right. I mean, that's really bad, isn't it? Or simply because you were not liked. That's right.
Yeah. Basically,
it was a bit like some ethnic minorities and stuff like that. Basically, anybody who had beef with was there a witch? That's right. You stood not a chance. I mean, literally, even if you tried to recluse yourself and stay in the house, people would have found fault with that.
So the Salem witches were not witches; it was massive.
Aye, that's right.
Probably it was massive, John. But Jennifer's back on the panel on Saturday. So if you want to ask Jennifer, she's the expert on it. She knows everything about the Salem witch trials. So if you want to pop that up on Saturday, then Jennifer's the lady to speak to.
Yep.
So there's Sam saying quick hello.
Oh, hello, Sam. Hello. Hope you're enjoying your work. Right. So I've lost that bit of paper. I've lost my trusty. There we go. Ghost witches. Do we know why witch hunts seemed localised? Because there's bugger all going on in Shropshire and Wales. Well, I'm not right sure if I was in it. Was there no witch trials?
Ghost witches, tomorrow night I'm covering the Essex witch trials courtesy of Laura, and I'm also going to be touching on Wales as well. Believe it or not, compared to the rest of the UK, there were far less witch trials in Wales. But I'm going to be touching on Wales tomorrow night as well. So I get back tomorrow night.
That's right. You better keep them right, Forrest.
Keep me right. Carry on, Shelly. I was just wanting to run through the comments.
No, that's fine. That's. I'm glad you did that, and I'm just going to finish off with what happened to Chris and Shaw at the end up, and then if there's any more questions, we can cover that till the end.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So So what happened to Chris and Shaw? Well, Chris and Shaw married a minister. Surprise, surprise. They all tended to marry ministers. I don't know why, but they did. She married a minister in 1718, but in 1721, they were only married about 5 years then. He passed away. After that, after she was widowed, her and her mother went to Holland and brought back machine things that led to building the Bargarin threads. So they built this big factory called the Bargarin threads, and it's quite a well-known. I think it still goes by this day, but it was sold over actually. So once she had got that, she moved to Edinburgh. And when she moved to Edinburgh, she started opening up spin classes and teaching youngsters and stuff like that how to make things with the threads that she was doing, how to spin the thread and stuff like that. And through that, then she remarried again. Now, unfortunately, the same year that she remarried, she then died. So she died the same year she remarried, which unfortunately for her was a bit quick. And God knows what her husband would have felt at that. He'd just literally got married and then lost his wife sadly. But now Christian Shaw is actually buried in Greyfriars Kirk, which is one wee grave bit I would love to go and pay a visit to after doing all this researching. And then 2 years after that, the Witches Act, the Act of Witchcraft, it was lifted just 2 years after Christian Shaw passed away. And that, my friends, is the end of my story. So if you've got any more questions, please feel free to ask.
I've got a question for you, Doc. That was great, Shelly. Thank you very much, Doc. And I'm from Glasgow, same as you, and I was fascinated by that. You know, I couldn't tell you the history of the Glasgow witches and whatnot. But see the accused, were they allowed any defence? You know, as in the case again, Pendle, they weren't allowed any defence. Were the accused in Glasgow and Paisley allowed any defence?
There was no mention of defence. There was absolutely no mention of defence in any of the research that I did. So I'm assuming no.
Because obviously in England, to defend a witch was seen as going against the king, and so that was considered as treason. You know.
That's right. And I think there was still a lot of that there, Scott, because when you read between the lines, like we were talking about the fear of the jury or bribing the doctors, you know, to kind of change, even if it was right enough that they were innocent.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't going to be allowed to be innocent. So there could have been, I don't know why, there was certainly none of the research that I had came up with the fact that they had defenders, people that would defend them. So therefore, that in itself was an unfair trial, because all these witnesses had told them that they were guilty. They had witness statements. They had witness statements that were corroborating each other. They had the test with the Christian Shaw to say that if they were in to touch Christian Shaw, they would obviously go in convulsions. The witches test was really thanks very much, Laura. Thank you. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. So the witch pickers came in and they were identified as all having like the marks and being witches. So they really never really stood a chance. I just think that the being defended would probably have been pointless. Documents on it, maybe.
Plus, the thing with the doctors as well, as I was saying earlier on, I think maybe another reason, I know we're calling them doctors, examiners or witch prickers, whatever they were called back then.
Aye.
I think maybe, and this is just my opinion, another reason they would never say that the person wasn't a witch would be maybe in case they get accused. Because let's face it, or we just one person to turn around and say, well, he didn't find her guilty, maybe he's one.
That's exactly what it was. It was the fear of being implicated in witchcraft when you really weren't. So you were feared to go against the grain. And as you said about the King James, I mean, nobody wanted to go against King James in the days. No.
Because you'd end up in the scaffold, you'd end up either end of a rope or being a head shorter, basically. Because that was the punishment for treason. You were made a head shorter. So maybe they were, because let's face it, at the end of the day, it only takes, even in today's society, it only takes one person to say something, even though it's not true. And, as we call in Glasgow, the rumour mill. The rumour mill starts turning. And before 100 people have heard it, and it's changed about 30 times.
Aye. Chinese whispers.
I don't think it's changed in all the years.
No, I don't think that it's changed all the years. I just think that, we've got lenient. And do you know what? A lot can be said for what happened back in the day, how they dealt with people. They just like, well, we're not putting up with that, you're out. Whereas now, they're letting murderers out in the street within a couple of years. People have done. I mean, it's actually chronic now when you think about the devastation that people are causing, and then they just go in and they're not serving any time whatsoever. People are losing their lives, and then people are getting out in a few years for causing the death of that people's life. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot to be said for how they dealt with stuff back in the day.
No, you're spot on with that one, Shelley. You say murderers, I mean, they'll get a life sentence and they're out in 8 or 10 years. They're back walking the streets. But back then, it's a case of, did you kill them? Aye, right. Rope. You're gone. There was no messing about. There was no, if you did, on a very rare occasion, back in the centuries, if you did get life imprisonment, then it was life, and your life would have been pretty short because of the conditions.
Aye, that's right. That's right.
So you weren't coming out either way. You were either coming out in the back of a cart, or you weren't coming out at all.
Aye, no, okay. So you just want to, like, sometimes, we talk about how brutal it was back in the day, but if it was still like that nowadays, there'd be less crime. There'd be less folk getting hurt, less Waynes getting hurt and stuff. So, I don't know. Maybe they're just that.
We're not obviously going to get into politics and everything, but I think I think if folk had that kind of fear the day that they did 300-400 years ago, I think it'd be a different society. But then again, would that mean that folk could be accused of being a witch?
Probably. And then we wouldn't stand a chance, would we?
So it's a kind of...
well, I think on that note, I think we'll call it a night. Is there any more people in the chat? No,
that's it. That's it. So thank you very much, Shelley.
Yeah, and thank you very much to you, Scotty, and to everybody else on the chat. Thanks for listening to me and putting up with me for that hour, because it's fascinated me researching all that stuff and learning about these women and children even, and just understanding the kind of history somewhere, and hopefully then you have learned a wee bit yourselves, and it's gave you a wee bit of a boost to go maybe have a wee look up on it yourselves. And I hope you come back tomorrow night to look and watch Scott.
We're back night to do on night number 5. Night number 5 it is in a quick week, I think.
It's been a fast week.
Tomorrow night we're doing, as I say, the Essex Witch Trials, courtesy of Laura Dawson, who's in the chat. Laura's wrote a piece on it, and I'm going to be doing it, and I'll be covering the Welsh witches as well. And if we get time, we'll be touching on witches' curses. Are they true? Are they not? Are they on the head? Who knows? So thanks very much, Shelley. Obviously, I'll hang on to you for a wee second or two after we go. And we'll see you tomorrow night, hopefully the same time. So stay
Thanks,
safe.
everybody. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.